Gentleman has adeptly used all his time asking the question and positing the issues, but we'll let the witnesses answer.
I could offer a quick comment. I think what you've pointed to is one part of a very worrisome phenomenon of the over-militarization of American foreign policy. And I think there are a couple of respects beyond the one that you pointed to where this was evident in Afghanistan. One was that when you are militarily engaged in a country, there's no problem getting the resources and support for the military effort. But there's still a lot of problem getting the resources and support for the diplomatic effort. And there is just an enormous power imbalance, not only in terms of congressional policies and practices, but in terms of what happens within the executive branch in the decision-making processes, whose voices are loudest and more numerous at the table in the National Security Council. There's a reason why these people get so many stars on their shoulder, and it's because they have a kind of can-do attitude that attracts support. And you want that in a general, but that doesn't mean that they should have such a determinative effect on U.S. foreign policy decisions. And the second way in which I saw it was that skepticism about the plausibility of diplomatic initiatives, particularly peace negotiation initiatives in earlier years, always got in the way of real, robust support for those initiatives, in a way that skepticism about the plausibility of winning the war never seemed to get in the way of putting the war-fighting effort front and center in U.S. policy. And that's a problem beyond Congress, but I think one that you can probably influence through your oversight.
Thank you. Senator Barrasso.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador Crocker, first, I really appreciate your taking the time to join this discussion. I have great value for your experience and service to our nation. You and I were together in Baghdad in 2007 during the surge on Thanksgiving Day. In September of this year, you discussed the situation in Afghanistan, stating this. You said, "We've done grave damage to our friends and allies inside of Afghanistan, to our own national security interests, and to some of our most cherished values as Americans." I completely agree with your assessment. So in August, President Biden oversaw the tragic and failed withdrawal from Afghanistan. Due to this administration's weakness, incompetence, and mismanagement, the Taliban took over Afghanistan in a matter of weeks. Both General McKenzie and General Milley testified before Congress that they advised the president not to withdraw completely. They recommended keeping 2,500 troops in Afghanistan. Yet President Biden refused to take their advice. President Biden ordered a complete withdrawal, and he abandoned Bagram Air Base. Just days before the withdrawal, terrorists killed 13 service members at the Kabul airport. One of those fallen heroes was Riley McCullum of Wyoming. It was the deadliest day for the U.S. military in a decade. Media reports indicate a terrorist responsible had been released from prison at Bagram Air Base when it fell to the Taliban. The consequences of President Biden's strategic failure have not ended. There are still Americans stranded behind enemy lines. The withdrawal was so rushed, the administration made serious vetting mistakes. Our allies and our partners are furious. Our enemies are emboldened. Yet it appears to many people that President Biden still believes that it was, quote, an extraordinary success. No one's been fired over the withdrawal from Afghanistan. No one's resigned. There's been no accountability. So I ask on behalf of so many veterans I saw in Wyoming the last week over Veterans Day, this question: who at the Department of State should be held accountable for the strategic failures and disorganized plans? Yeah, Ambassador Crocker. Who should be held responsible for the strategic failures and the disorganized plans?
Senator, that's a question that perhaps Congress could answer by holding other hearings, because I do think that answer is important. I'll give you an historical parallel that I hope we don't pursue any further than we already have. I was in Lebanon in the early 1980s as political counselor. I was there when the embassy was bombed in 1983, April, and I was there when the Marine barracks were bombed in October. The blame reached no higher than the commander of the MAU, now MU, Marine Expeditionary Unit, Colonel Tim Garrity. He was the only one to pay a significant price. No one above him in the chain of command, military or civilian, suffered any consequences for that horrible lapse. Fast forward all these years later, it's the Marines again at an airport. It is the Marines again in a tactically wholly disadvantageous position who paid the price. Those Marines weren't born in 1983. Their parents probably weren't born in 1983, but I guarantee you every Marine out there then knew the story exactly, and they did their duty anyway. And I hope that in assessing responsibility, we will not stop at the MU commander or the division commander there at the time. And again, as I've said and as others have said, there is plenty of blame to go around here. President Biden was the sitting president who ordered the final withdrawal. He owns it. But it is equally true that President Trump set us all on a course that led to what we're dealing with now. So,
Ambassador Crocker, after President Biden's strategic failure in Afghanistan, we have seen the consequences of this weakness all across the world. China has aggressively flown dozens of military planes over Taiwan's air defense zones. China is also building up its military, testing hypersonic weapons, and emboldened Putin is amassing a large Russian military buildout. They're doing this on the border with Ukraine right now, including an estimated 100,000 troops. Russia is threatening Europe's energy security, withholding gas supplies to Europe. North Korea is launching ballistic missiles from submarines, and Iranian helicopter repeatedly buzzed a U.S. naval ship. Iranian-backed Houthis stormed the U.S. embassy in Yemen and held local U.S. employed staff hostage. What actions, Ambassador Crocker, must the United States take immediately to reestablish a deterrent and prevent the destabilizing actions of so many adversaries around the world?
Senator, the United States needs to reassert its position as a global leader. We led the world from 1945 up until the last two presidencies. President Biden said that he would return us to the world stage in a leadership role. Well, this would be a great time for him to take the concrete steps toward that end, to reassure our allies that America is not withdrawing from the world, and to do that where necessary in concrete terms. Look, everybody gets tired, I suppose, of leadership. We have led the world, not always for the best, but overall, I think we've been a hugely positive force on the world stage for over 70 years since World War II. My view is we need to keep playing that role, because if we don't, no one else will. It's not that the Chinese will replace us. They can't and would not even try. It's that no one will. And we then re-enter a balance of power system, which is great until it gets unbalanced, as we saw in World War I and World War II. So it is this critical need for the U.S. to lead, for President Biden, who has certainly talked the talk on that, and then did everything opposite in Afghanistan, for him to reassert his intention for both our allies and our adversaries that the United States is not withdrawing from the world.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr.